How are you, Kanak?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. I heard you're into some light reading, some
Yeah.
Dostoevsky there. Are you looking to stay busy over the summer with some novels?
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. What's on your list?
I mean, I don't have a proper list. I'm just reading, just looking up things online, and I like find a novel and I'm like, oh, that's interesting. I'm gonna check that out. So I was telling Angie that I've read a couple of nonfiction novels recently. One of them is called The Future of Humanity. So that's really interesting. So it talks about the technology we would need to develop in order to colonize the moon, Mars, and other planets. So, but it is very scientific. So it's a really interesting read.
Wow.
And apart from that, I'm also reading a couple of classics that I haven't had the chance to read.
What classics are you reading?
Right now, I'm reading The Great Gatsby.
Yes. Excellent.
Yeah.
Amazing. Amazing. Don't watch the movie. We'll ruin it for you. Yeah. Fantastic. Wonderful. Wonderful. Very good. I think we'll just give it a few more minutes since it's like 5 on the dot right now. Good. How else are you staying busy, Kanak? Are you staying home? Are you leaving the house at all?
I'm leaving the house once in a while. So I've been spending a lot of time with my family, and I've been meeting my friends on and off as well. Yeah.
And have you gone to the beach or the mall?
I've been to the mall. Actually, I live kind of really close to the mall. It's like a 5-minute walk from my house. So I've been there a couple of times, but I haven't been to the beach yet, no.
Okay. Is the mall busy when you go, or is it quiet? Is it pretty like empty?
I think it depends. So if you go sort of in the evening, it's usually pretty busy, especially near the Carrefour area. It's always like super crazy because there are always people in the supermarket.
Yes.
But yeah, the rest of the mall is sort of okay. It's not too bad.
Good, good. Make sure you keep your 1.5 meter space between you and the other.
Definitely.
Incredible. Good, good, good. And how excited are you right now about Princeton? Are you worried, excited? Is it a mix of emotions that you're going through?
I mean, I'm super excited. I don't think I'm too worried. I'm just because I've gotten to talk to a lot of people, and they're all really interesting and super amazing. So I'm really excited to
Cool.
join in the fall. Yeah.
Have you met your future roommate?
No, so actually, I don't know if Princeton is going to be online this fall, or if we're going to be going to campus. So yeah, I don't know if we're going to have our roommates and things.
Okay, but you've joined like the Facebook group, and you've connected with other students. Anyone else from the UAE going that you've met, or the GCC?
There is one more person from the UAE, but I haven't had the chance to chat with her yet.
Okay, cool. Yeah, some of the students have already made like best friends, and they already have their little groups. Some are working on like tech ideas already, and making plans. So technology is pretty incredible. Very cool. Excellent. Very good. I think we should get started now, if that's all right. If Nermeen, are we good to go? Do we have your blessing? Our technical advisor? Yes, we are. Okay, we have gotten the green light from Nermeen.
All right.
Thank you. Excellent. So thank you everybody for joining us again for this week's edition of Ivy Insider. We are very privileged here at Hale Education to have both our host and senior educational consultant, Angie, who is joining us during her leave, by the way. So thank you, Angie, for making time while you're taking time off to participate today. We really appreciate it. And I think everybody benefits from your insight from over 20 years of experience, both as an admissions officer and as an educational consultant. We're also joined by Kanak, who is now a graduate of DAA. Is that correct? We're done, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Amazing. Dubai American Academy here in Dubai. an IB school, despite the name. An incredible institution, and I'm so proud of you and all of your achievements. Can't wait to hear about your experiences, not only with Princeton, but about the application process. My name is Peter Davos. I am the founder and CEO of Hale, as Angie introduced me. I'm just going to moderate the questions at the end, and I would encourage everybody to place their questions in the little Q&A box at the bottom. We will get to all of them at the conclusion of the discussion. And without further ado, I will hand it over to you, Angie and Kanak.
Great. Thank you, Peter, for the nice introduction. And for those of you who are joining us both on Facebook and during the webinar itself, it is an absolute joy and privilege for me to introduce you to Kanak. It has been an absolute joy to work with her. She's not only a delightful human being and incredibly achieved, as you would imagine, of a student from Princeton. And so I look forward to our conversation today, ma'am, because it's been a long time since we stopped writing essays. I only get to see you every few weeks in this process. So you probably know a great many people, or you might remember yourself, Kanak, from when you were just starting your high school journey and thinking about going to university in the US, that a lot of people want to know, what does a Princeton University admitted student actually look like, or a Stanford student, or an Ivy League student? What's so special that makes you so different from other students? And it really is individual to each and every person, which I think is one of the gorgeous things about this process as a whole. But you yourself, of course, are academically excellent in an IB program, higher levels in the standard physics, chemistry, and maths, because you're going to study engineering at Princeton. All right. Tell me about your standard level course choices, however, because I find those fascinating.
So at standard level, I chose French, economics, and English language and literature.
English language and literature. And your extended essay topic?
So I did my extended essay in English, and my research question was how does the portrayal of settings, particularly religious, spatial, and temporal, in Waiting for Godot and No Exit, portray the existential notion that humans are condemned to be free? Yes.
I love it. I love it. As a former admissions officer, that we have a woman engineer writing about existentialism for her extended essay topic. And I think that's one of the first little things that helped you stand out in this process, that nimbleness of your intellect and interests in that regard. But beyond the academics in which you've shined all, throughout your time in school, your achievements outside of the classroom are absolutely humbling. And they include, internships with Luta Biofuels and other companies. But what you've done with different engineering projects in Nigeria really kind of built you into the engineer you are and set the stage for the engineer you will become. So can you tell us a little bit about that process?
Yeah, sure. So over the past 2.5, 3 years, I've worked on 3 different projects that are related to sustainable energy. So the first one I worked on was a electrification project, wherein I gained funding from a company to electrify a village with about 100 households using wind and solar power. My second project was designing and prototyping biogas digesters using local low-cost materials. And the third project that I worked on was providing farmers with access to solar-powered pond aerators. And essentially, what these pond aerators do is increase fish farmers' yield and profitability.
Yeah. And you've also received recognition from the governor of
Kaduna in Nigeria.
Of Kaduna, for your work there. You've definitely changed the lives of at least 100 households, right? By bringing them safe cooking practices, electricity, and a sustainable boost to their economy in the fishing realm. I love this, and those are kind of like the engineering profile. But that's not all Kanak has done. Delightfully, she has also earned grade 7 in the Royal Academy of Dance for ballet.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
you're doing point work. And part of the Rubik's Cube Art Club.
Mm-hmm.
Robotics.
Yeah.
Anything else?
I mean, I played a bit of golf, but I'm not very good at that. And yeah, I dabbled in a couple of other activities, but I didn't really stick with them because I just wanted to explore, but then I figured that they weren't really for me.
Yeah. And additionally, kind of not only your work in Nigeria, you've also spent years committed to various community service activities.
Yeah, so I volunteer at an organization in India, which is for cancer patients who have migrated from villages to seek treatment in Mumbai. So I work with an organization that provides meals as well as other essentials to those sort of patients and their families who otherwise won't be able to afford those products. Yeah.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you for sharing. So that's a little bit of a picture of Kanak going into this, but there's a lot more to your journey, right? Because it's been 4 years, right? This is a victory 4 years in the making. So can you tell us about what your journey through the last 4 years looked like, both academically and outside of the classroom?
Sure. So academically, I attended ninth grade in Ghana at Lincoln Community School, and then I moved to DAA in 10th grade. So the transition was a little bit challenging, I guess, because DAA was a much more, I guess, academically challenging environment, and it helped me really grow and develop critical thinking skills as well as sort of other higher level thinking skills. So I think that's also very evident in my transcript because my grades in the first semester were slightly lower than in the second semester in pretty much every year. And that really goes to show that even though I wasn't doing poorly at any time in school, I was consistently making an effort to improve and, you know, strive to better myself in, you know, any way that I can. So that's sort of what my academic journey looked like. And also as part of the IB program, I got to explore a lot of different disciplines. And that's when I found my love for philosophy, particularly existential philosophy. And that really stemmed from studying about T.S. Eliot in English class. And then I realized that that was something that really intrigued me and fascinated me. And I decided to pursue that further by, you know, finding a blend of philosophy and English in my extended essay topic. And outside of school, like I previously mentioned, I worked on a lot of different projects. So, you know, through those projects, I've grown a lot and learned a lot of different skills. So the first project, while it was successful, I realized there were issues in terms of scaling it because that was the kind of project that needed constant funding to, you know, take those ideas to another village and so on. So I then wanted to work on a different initiative that would be easier to scale and that could impact more people's lives. So the biogas digester project was, that's why I was really focused on developing it using low-cost materials and making sure that the design was easy enough to teach it to anyone, and that could be a skill that you know, villagers could pass on to others. So that was the intention behind that project because you know, I realized that one of the major issues I faced in the previous project was the scalability. Then for the third project that I worked on, I made sure that it was a project that benefited the company that was funding it as well, so that it was in their interest to continually, you know, make that initiative, spread that initiative, and get other farmers to sign up for it. So essentially, the idea was that the company would provide these solar powered aerators to farmers, and in exchange, they would agree to buy their feed. So it was an initiative that benefited both the company as well as the farmers. So yeah.
Yeah, so I think in our conversations, at the essays and supplements, that was a big conversation that you had. It's like, this entrepreneurial aspect to engineering is so important to the sustainability of these projects. And I think that was one of the fascinating things that you explored in quite a few of your supplementary essays, which we'll get to in just a little bit. But tell me about, the summers when you weren't doing projects in Nigeria. What else did you do over the summer, the last 4 years?
So last summer, I attended LaunchX at MIT, which is an entrepreneurship program. So there I worked with a team on developing a startup for children with autism. So essentially, we were developing an app that would help them with emotion recognition.
It's really interesting. And you continue that throughout the school year.
Yes, and I also, in the summer between 9th and 10th grade, I attended ID Tech Camp. So there I got to learn more about sort of robotics, coding, all those kinds of things. So that was really fun as well.
Yeah, it's so interesting to me. ID Tech, right? These 2-week camps, some of them online, some of them in person. Each of the top engineers I've worked with in 15 years have all got their start somewhere at ID Tech. It just kind of creates this experience that really harnesses energy in that regard. And you've also programmed a pirouette performing robot. Yeah. You've done a lot of different things. Yeah. That's a lot of fun. So in this journey, right? You mentioned this transition of high schools and the little rough patch there. Over this journey, what did you find you needed the most help with along the way?
So I think I needed, for the application process, I needed the maximum amount of help with the essays, because sort of going into the process, I didn't really know much about the process of applying to universities in the US, and I didn't know what was kind of expected out of the essays and what admissions officers were looking for. So I think it was really helpful to have someone guide me through that and help me navigate the process. And it was really helpful to be able to brainstorm with someone and have someone read 10 drafts of my essay. So because I feel that even if you're a good writer, it's good to have help when writing admissions essays, because they're very different from the academic writing that we're used to doing in school, because there's a lot of information that needs to be fit into just a couple of words, because you're really trying to express who you are, what your values are, what is important to you in just maybe 650 words or something like that. And that's a really difficult task to accomplish in my view. Yeah. And so I think it's really helpful to have someone, be there to read your essays and, also challenge you to reflect in different ways and think about your experiences in ways that you wouldn't have normally thought of.
Yeah, and I have to say, some of your essays are absolutely gorgeous. And when you put them together, well, they win, right? They absolutely win. Yeah. So all of this together, your journey and kind of the conversations you've had with mentors along the way, because I wasn't the only Hale person along with your journey, because you've been with the company for a long time. What do you think made both your experiences throughout high school and finally in your admissions application? What made you stand out?
So I think what made me stand out was my deep commitment to my sustainable energy projects. And I think it's very clear that I was trying to, really make sure that I could create projects that made a real impact. And I think that's also evident through my journey in trying to try out different business models, different projects to see what really works and what benefits the community in sort of the biggest way and the most meaningful way. So I think that's one thing that stood out. And I think another thing that stood out was sort of the fact that I mentioned a lot of quirky things about myself in my application. So I talked about my interest in food plating and how I like to sort of express mathematical or scientific concepts on the plate and make all kinds of wacky food creations. So I think that was also something that was very different and unique about myself. And that sort of highlighted my artistic capabilities and creativity.
Yes, and that's also one of my favorite essays that you're able to write, the supplements about food plating as a study guide, um, and other kinds of things. What were some of the challenges you faced, right? Because now you're sitting here with Princeton in hand, and it was not the only yes you received, right? You received quite a few gorgeous offers, right? You got to say no to Columbia, Cornell, Penn. Actually, you were admitted to every Ivy League school that you chose to apply to, in addition to other wonderful schools around the world. But it wasn't always smooth sailing. There were definitely challenges. There were definitely disappointments. So tell us about what some of those challenges were that you faced during this process and how you overcame them.
Okay, so I applied ED to UPenn. So I applied to their MNT program, which essentially allows you to get a degree from the Wharton Business School as well as their engineering school. So that's a program, that was probably the most competitive program that I applied to. I think their acceptance rate is something crazy, like 2% or something like that. Initially, I didn't think I really had a shot, but I was like, I'll just try it out. I'll apply ED. But I got a chance to do the interview, and my interview went really well, and my interviewee was super impressed with me. So I was really confident that I could get in. But come sort of November, I opened up my decision letter, and I found out that I was rejected from the MNT program. So that was obviously really disappointing because, after my interview, I was really hopeful that I would get in. So that was definitely challenging to get past, but I think I was able to overcome this challenge by talking to you and Lizette as well, because you really encouraged me and told me that, this door has shut, but that's opened up the doors to many other universities. And there's a lot of other exciting opportunities that I might be able to, take part in. So I think that really helped me sort of reframe and, get back up and, tell myself that I'm going to make sure that I put my best foot forward for all the other applications that I'm going to send out.
Yes, you recovered that very quickly. And though you were rejected from the MNT program, you were still in consideration for UPenn's engineering program.
Yeah, so if you apply ED to the dual degree programs, you also have the option of being considered for the individual schools in either ED or regular decision. So I opted to be considered for just the engineering program in regular decision, yeah.
And what was that response?
So I did get in to Penn Engineering. So because I did write a letter of continued interest, as well as attach an additional recommendation from Professor Tan, who I worked with during my, while I was working on the aerator project in Nigeria. Yeah.
Some really nice things. So through these challenges and disappointments and the hard work, because of the set of schools that you applied to, and you did apply to many, some with us and some on your own, right? Mm-hmm. Taking what you'd learned. What did you learn about yourself along the way? Because it is a process of self-discovery.
Yeah, definitely. So I think I learned a lot about my identity. So my Common App essay was about my Indian and Ghanaian identity, because I did spend a lot of time in Ghana before moving to Dubai. So that's an important part of who I am. And, Ghana has really shaped me into the person that I am today. So, prior to starting this process, I hadn't really considered carefully what it really means for me, how Ghana has shaped me, and, what that aspect of my personality really looks like. So I hadn't really delved into that and thought about, what my identity is like and how that's a mix between Indian and Ghanaian. And it was really rewarding to be able to explore that through the Common App prompt.
Yeah, and it was a beautiful result too. It was a beautiful essay. Very well written, very nice story, very heartfelt. And when taken with the other essays, they really got to shine. So speaking of all the essays, and you wrote many, you probably wrote at least 50 essays.
Yeah,
Just
I've just lost
a
count
lot.
because it was just too many.
Yeah, a lot. Stanford alone had 11. Princeton had what, 6, 7?
I think they had 3 or 4 big essays, and then they had a bunch of like those tiny questions.
Yeah,
I don't know. There
that
was
are
quite a
really
few.
difficult. Yeah, we spent a lot of time on that one as well. But what was your favorite prompt from the applications this last year?
So my favorite prompt was a prompt from Princeton. So I'll actually just open it up just so I know what the exact wording was. So the question was, using your favorite quotation from an essay or book you have read in the last 3 years as a starting point, tell us about an event or experience that helped you define one of your values or changed how you approach the world. So I think that was my favorite essay because it's super open-ended and it gave me the opportunity to be really creative. And I started with a quote from T.S. Eliot's poem, The Love Song of J. Alfred Prufrock. So the quote I chose was, "Do I dare eat a peach?" And in the essay, I essentially talked about my interest in interdisciplinary learning and how I like to, take concepts from different disciplines and use them to create, be it, whether it's making technology or, creating food art or coding or whatever. So I just talked about how, I'm really interested in a lot of different disciplines because they serve as a source of inspiration for my creations.
Yes, that is actually my favorite of yours as well. And the MIT food plating one, which is a lot of fun and shows the quirkiness. And my other little tiny favorite was the short essay you got to write about the Rubik's Cube Art Club, in which you had to overcome a challenge. So you had some really wonderful essays that you got to write. What was the hardest prompt to write?
I think probably the hardest prompts were the short questions. I mean, going into the process, I thought like, oh, I've done the long essays. These short questions, I'm just going to sit for like an hour, going to be done with all of them, like super chill. So that was not the case at all. I think I probably spent more time on some of the shorter prompts than I did on the longer essays. And I guess the question that I found the most difficult were the questions that were like, oh, describe yourself in N number of words. So there were quite a few different ones. I think Stanford was 5 words. But Princeton also had another one, which I'm not sure if it was 5 or 10 words. So yeah, those were probably the most difficult because it's really hard to distill your, identity and personality in just a couple of words.
Yeah, and not use words that every other student would be using at that time. That is one of the hardest prompts a student will attack. Stanford's describe yourself in 5 words, but they give you 10 words to do it. Yeah, but that requires some thinking and reflection for sure in that regard. So strategy, hope, sweat, tears, and work, a lot of work. You are absolutely diligent throughout this whole process, not only as a student, but engaged in this application process and the writing process. All of this work aside, what was the most meaningful part of the application process for you?
I think the most meaningful part was definitely being able to reflect on all of my experiences and sort of really take the time to acknowledge the lessons that I've learned through, all the various experiences that I've had. So I think really taking the time to not only think about those things, but also writing them down really was super meaningful to me because, it really helped me better understand my experiences because a lot of the time we don't take the time to, look back at the things that we've done, the lessons that we've learned. So I think that was really the most meaningful part of the whole journey for me.
Yeah, I think John Dewey says it best. We do not learn from experience. We learn from reflecting on experience.
Yeah,
right.
Definitely.
And not only students, but adults. Many of us don't take enough time to stop and do that kind of reflection. But I'm glad that was a really meaningful part of your transition, right?
Yeah.
Not just getting your offers, but actually the mindset transition into this new phase of your life,
Yeah.
right? About being really excited. What are you looking forward to most in studying
Princeton.
at Princeton? Yeah.
I'm really looking forward to being involved in research because Princeton is really undergraduate focused. So as a student there, you get to interact with all the professors more or less. And, you know, there's professors who have Nobel Prizes, you know, and all kinds of other awards. So I'm really excited to be part of research. And that's also a really integral part of Princeton, because in the junior year, you have the option to do a junior paper. And then in the senior year, you do a project at the end, a capstone project, which is essentially sort of a lengthy research paper. So those are the research opportunities that are inbuilt into the Princeton curriculum. But aside from that, I mean, even starting from freshman year, you have the opportunity to work in an actual lab with professors and really, you know, be part of cutting edge research in whatever field that you're interested in. And I think that really, really excites me.
Yeah, that is really exciting for you. And I'm very excited for them that you get to join them, right, in that regard. Now, kind of before we transition to like the general advice you have for younger students, there was a pre-question submitted for you by a student who's asleep now because they're 7 hours ahead in New Zealand. An 8th grade student who sees this long journey ahead of her, right? And she and her family have looked at all the stories of students who've gone before and succeeded, and she's feeling a little overwhelmed. And she wants to know, how did you manage to achieve so much and stay a human being? How did you manage this balance in your life and your time?
So I think in order to accomplish a lot, I think it's really important to make the most of all of your vacations. So for a lot of my major projects, I worked, so I traveled to Nigeria practically every summer, winter, and spring vacation. And I tried to, you know, get as much done during that time. Of course, I did relax and, you know, take time to, you know, just reset as well. But I think making use of that time is really, really invaluable, because you can just get so much done. And aside from that, I always try to set aside an hour and a half or 2 hours every day and just dedicate that to some kind of extracurricular. And I think just having that on your calendar makes all the difference, because it just, you know, prioritizes extracurriculars just as much as academics. And I think that's really important in order to really succeed and, you know, accomplish a lot in a short period of time. Yeah, and make the most of the time that you have.
And how many hours of sleep would you get a night during the school year on average, especially the last 2 years?
I think probably an average of 6, and then during exam time, like 4-ish. But
Yeah, I think like the world during exam time.
2 times a year, so it's not too bad.
Exams are awful. They're gonna be awful in university too.
Yeah.
So looking back, right, hindsight is 2020. And you know that there are students who are in the process now, right? And students who are knocking on the door of the process, and those who got it in mind for the long road. What advice do you have for the younger students who are on their own journeys to university?
I think the most important piece of advice that I can share is just starting early and just being super organized. So I think one thing that really helped me was I spoke to someone when I was in this process. I spoke to an upper class man, and she told me essentially that you should try to get your SAT done at the beginning of 11th grade. And that really made all the difference for me, because I was able to just do the SAT once and be done with it. And, you know, that freed up a lot of time for extracurriculars, academics, all those kinds of things that I wanted to do. And by contrast, I would see a lot of people in my own grade who were who didn't have the time to actually prepare for the SAT during the school year. And as a result, they were doing it 2-3 times. So I think it's really important to be organized and get things done, early. And it's also important to try to, especially with standardized testing, get it done in 1 try or 2 tries instead of really, dwelling on it. I think it's just better to prepare really well for the first take and just get it out of the way, because it just makes the process a lot easier and you don't feel so overwhelmed by all the things that you need to do, and it's just one thing that's off your checklist. So I think it's really, so I think that's my main piece of advice, just be organized and try to get things done early.
I have a question for you, and it's something we've not actually really talked about. But I think it'd be really interesting to hear your thoughts on this, if you can come up with some on the fly. When it comes to choosing what extracurricular activities, right? Because this is always a hot topic. Like, what should I do?
Yeah.
Right? What was your approach to choosing the things that you did outside of your time or outside of school time?
I mean, so sort of in 9th grade, I just tried a bunch of things. 9th and sort of beginning of 10th grade, I just wanted to try a lot of things and see, what really stood out to me and what was really, really interesting to me. So in 10th grade, I had the opportunity to do 2 different internships that were related to sustainable energy and sustainability in general. So those internships made it very evident to me that this was an area that was of particular interest to me. And during my internship in Nigeria, I also had the opportunity to visit the village and the community that I worked with for the past 3 years, and the village that I electrified. And just being there, I knew that and seeing that community and seeing the fact that there were very simple solutions that could be implemented in order to significantly improve the lives of those people. I think that really inspired me to dedicate my time to this particular extracurricular. So I think my advice would just be to try different things and see what fascinates you and what interests you, because at the end of the day, there isn't any right extracurricular activity or perfect extracurricular activity. It's just important to, fully commit to whatever you're doing and, really take the time to, put in the effort and grow in some way through that extracurricular.
Yeah. And I think it's also important to note, and one of my favorite things is you were on this internship in Nigeria and you were in a Jeep with a couple other interns and you were driving and it was night and you didn't realize you were in a village except for the sound of talking happening around the Jeep. And that was your first experience with energy poverty.
Yeah.
And that's when you decided, you saw a need and you decided to act.
Yep.
Right? You were open to that possibility and you created this project, right? Yeah. With some of your other things. So it's not just about what's out there that you can take advantage of. It's keeping your eyes open and being like, I can do something.
Yeah, I think it's also important to create opportunities for yourself and not just rely on sort of clubs or other things that are already in place for you at your school. I think one of the big things that these universities look for is initiative. So it's really important to, it's really impressive if you can start something of your own, because that shows real, true commitment and dedication.
Yeah. And not only did you learn a lot about engineering, you learned a lot about business, entrepreneurship, and all these other kinds of project management. And just really, really wonderful skills that has served you well over the last few years and will continue to serve you, and because of you, the world very nicely. So Thank you so much for your time, ma'am. I think now we can turn to questions from our participants or from Peter, right? Hi, Peter, welcome back.
I now understand why I was rejected from Princeton about 24 years ago. There's no way I could have competed with a student like Kanak. Amazing. I don't think I could compete today with all of your achievements. Absolutely incredible. I am so blown away by all that you have achieved, and know that this is just the beginning of your journey. It's just going to take a different iteration now, and cannot be prouder and happier for you, but really inspirational. I rarely am impressed by stories. I've quite a few, but your story has really just me. So thank you for sharing your experiences, Kanak, and for being so frank and opening up about not only the successes you had, but also some of the challenges. I really appreciate that, and I think all of our attendees do as well. We have quite a few questions now that we will try to get through all of them, or most of them. All of them are from anonymous attendees. So I will just read out the question, and then you can answer them. So interesting, this one is both for you, Kanak, and for Angie, but let Kanak go first. Do you think the high school you go to or you went to plays a role in which college you get into? What do you think?
I don't think it really plays a massive role in the university that you get into. It's really important, though, that regardless of which high school you attend, you make the most of the opportunities that are available to you. So whether that be taking some of the more challenging classes or courses that are offered at your school, or participating in leadership roles or any activities that your school offers. And if those aren't available, then I think you need to put in that extra effort to create some of those opportunities yourself. So I think in general, it doesn't make a huge difference.
Amazing. Angie, what are your thoughts on that topic?
As a former admissions officer, it actually plays a bigger role than you might think. It's just, Kanak's very lucky she goes to a very nice high school, right? And actually there are a great many wonderful high schools in the city. And so most students, this should not be an issue, but high school quality does matter, because especially these top universities, they like schools they can trust the quality of the students. And that comes from about 8 to 10 years of data of students who've gone before. And if there has not been a Princeton admit at your high school, you have opened doors for generations after you, right? Because now they have this golden trust. And if you're not sure, like where your high school falls on this, just look at where other students have gone in the past, and you should be fine. But there are other ways to overcome that, again, through your achievements in and outside of the classroom. But it does play a role. That trust helps. It makes it a lot easier.
Very good insight. And I'm thinking about our first Ivy Insider panelist this year, Parth, who graduated from CBSC high school in Abu Dhabi, Bright Riders, that had never sent anyone to a leading US university. He ultimately was accepted to Stanford, and he just completed his freshman year there. And again, what you mentioned, Kanak, and also Angie, is that there were not a lot of opportunities there. The infrastructure was not in place, so he created it. He created a TED Talk series, right? He created a philanthropic initiative that ultimately engaged over 100 volunteers from his high school and beyond Abu Dhabi. So there is opportunity there, right? No matter where you go. And I love the fact that you mentioned if you don't have those options through high school, go out there and create them. That's true leadership. When you leave a legacy that extends beyond your own tenure at that school, and when you create something, right? As opposed to focusing just on your leadership titles in the clubs that maybe exist at school. So amazing, thank you. Next question, how do you manage to interact with a UPenn professor while working on one of your engineering projects?
So I didn't interact with the UPenn professor. The professor I worked with teaches at GCU Australia. So I specifically contacted him because he had a lot of, so he's a professor of aquaculture, and he has a lot of experience with sort of, helping Nigerian farmers specifically. So I just sort of wrote a bunch of emails to lots of different professors, hoping that someone would respond and be willing to help me out. And I think that's one of the big things, is just putting yourself out there and, just sending out a bunch of random emails, or just, cold calling or whatever to make those things happen. Because a lot of the times, professors are willing to help if you really show true commitment, and you really convince them of the fact that you genuinely want to start a project that's going to make an impact. So they are often sort of willing to help. So I think it's just about sending out lots of emails, and maybe out of 50, one person will reply, and that's all that matters, really.
Was that the ratio that you experienced? Did you send out 50 and get one response?
I sent out, I think, about 35 emails or so.
And how many professors responded?
So only one professor agreed to help me out. So yeah.
Incredible, incredible. So that, for the students that are listening, that's what it takes. I hope that answers your question. Thank you very much. You mentioned MIT LaunchX. We didn't talk about that. That is one of the coolest, most competitive, innovative, exciting summer programs. Please walk us through why you applied, okay, what the application process was like, and also what was the experience like, because I think it's just, if you can get in, it's just pretty much about the best thing you can do if you're a budding entrepreneur.
Yeah, so I applied because I wanted to sort of improve some of my entrepreneurship skills, because I felt that those were really, really important in creating successful projects of any kind, whether they're engineering projects or other business initiatives. So that's why I chose to apply to the program. So essentially, to apply, I think there's about a couple of essays, maybe 2 or 3, which are relatively short. And you also need to create a, I think, 5-minute video where essentially you're talking about the kinds of things that you've already done that are related to entrepreneurship or business, as well as any other activities that you participate in. So that's essentially what you need to do in order to apply. So yeah, the experience was actually really incredible, because I got to meet a lot of really driven and motivated people at the program. And we were taught by a lot of really cool professors. Like, we had a professor from Harvard Business School who was teaching a case study. Then we had a MIT Sloan professor who also came to do a lecture, and we got to meet a lot of different entrepreneurs and hear their stories and learn about their experiences, understand their challenges and how they overcame them, and what it really takes to be a successful entrepreneur. So I think that experience was really useful, and I learned a lot about entrepreneurship in sort of a formal way, because prior to that, when in my project, I was just sort of trying out different things, but I didn't really have a basis for what true entrepreneurship should be like, and sort of what are the strategies that you can use. And that experience really helped me grow as an entrepreneur. And another thing I really like about that program is that you don't only learn things through lectures or case studies, but you actually try to apply the lessons you learn to create your own startup at the as part of the project, as part of the summer program, excuse me. So
very good. That
was really great as well, because when you just learn theory, there's a lot of lessons that are missed out. But when you actually practice what you learn, I think that's when true learning really occurs.
I cannot agree with you more. As an entrepreneur, you have to learn by doing. That's the only way. And would encourage all budding entrepreneurs to enroll in the MIT edX course, which is free and open and self-paced and available, which also has a great overview of what it takes to become an entrepreneur. So if some of you are looking for ways to fill your summer, there's a really good one. Amazing, very good. Next question, this is for both of you, Kanak and Angie. Well, Kanak, Looks like you had a long list of schools. How did you decide between the target and reach schools?
So I think my college list was sort of unbalanced. So I applied to 16 schools in the US, of which 10 were reach. I had 2 safeties and 4 targets. So yeah, so the reason I had so many reach schools was because I'd already received an offer from UCL in the UK. So I felt a little bit more confident in cutting down on some of the safeties and trying to really, aim for the top tier schools in the US. Yeah.
Good. Angie, what do you think? Is that typical to have that mix of universities? Does the typical high school senior pursue the same kind of strategy?
I think Kanak is being really modest with herself because some of her target and safety schools are other people's reach schools. So, and that's something that as a long time admissions person, I know, like some students, Purdue is absolutely a reach, but for Kanak, that was a safety choice, right? Because of not only her academic ability, but because of her achievements and experiences outside of the classroom. And those are the considerations that when you're at this level, like the reach schools are those that accept less than 25%, but actually for a student with this kind of profile, reach schools are those that accept less than 10%. And so some of those target schools, right, who would think, most people don't consider, UBC or UCLA as a target. Right, but and targets and Kanak's profile and experience, it would be a target university as opposed to a reach university. So actually, she does have a very nice balance in this list. And when at the end of the day, she had offers all up and down the line, some of which came with scholarships that she may or may not have asked for, but got them anyway. Right. So that's kind of a nice part. Yeah, that's a nice part of the balance. So when we look at what it creates a balanced school list, it really depends on the student's profile and what that means. And sometimes that's at the discretion of the consultant, knowing what they know about past cases, as you know, Peter.
Yeah, I was going to say that's probably one of the most important tasks that we have here at Hale as counselors is to make sure that the list is balanced. We spend a lot of time researching the schools. The student has to research the schools. The student should understand the unique campus culture, right? The curriculum, why they're a good fit for that particular institution and vice versa, why the institution is a good fit for them. If anybody here who is attending the webinar would like to learn more about how we help students with the college list and beyond, please shoot us an email, info@haleeducation.com, and we can set up a free initial consultation. Great. Next question. How many campus tours did you visit? How many campus tours did you complete? And what were you looking for when you visited campuses?
So I did visit a lot of universities. I don't know the exact number, but I guess I would have done maybe 7 or 8 different tours. So I guess what I was really looking for was a university where there was a lot of opportunity to explore different, areas of different fields, and it wasn't really very rigid. And you didn't have to sort of commit very early on to a specific major. And even when you did commit to a major, you had that flexibility to, still, explore other areas. Because for me, it was really important to go to a school that would also provide me the opportunity to continue to learn about entrepreneurship as well as philosophy, and would also give me the opportunity to explore a couple of other academic interests. And so I think that was one of the main things for me. And I guess the other thing was just trying to interact with some of the students there to understand what the culture was like and to see if I could see myself going to that university and fitting in.
Very good. Angie, how has college research changed in the time of COVID when most students cannot attend any in-person campus tours?
Right, and that is such a challenge. And I think one of the lovely things that many universities are doing, and I think Tufts is doing an exemplary job of this, as well as Georgetown. So any other university who might out there be listening, look at these two admissions offices for how they're creating experiences by offering multiple members of the community to speak with students, both in groups and coffee chats, one-on-one with admissions officers, where students wouldn't normally have that kind of one-on-one time with a school like Tufts, for example, but also information sessions, virtual campus tours that are guided with students, and also having coffee talks with current students and alumni, really trying to make the community come alive with the people. Right, where you don't get to see and feel those unknown sensory experiences. Like, you know, my campus is known for a cheesy breeze because there's a Cheeto factory down the street, and that puts some people off. You know, like, you don't get those kinds of experiences, but you definitely get to have the human interaction and get a sense for the people and their priorities and how they might match. And that's definitely something to engage in. And those are usually free, and you can go to their admission sites and sign up for those and register for those and prepare good questions. And so that's what a lot of my clients, and I'm pretty sure your clients, have been doing this summer, really having those conversations with admissions people who can't come to travel here and because they can't go to travel there.
Yeah, I think it's another opportunity, right? That the universities have really tried to expand their virtual offerings to make sure that students are engaged. Not every student can visit every university they're going to apply to, but now they can, so there's no excuse. So if you are a rising senior, please make every effort to get to know the university through these resources. The universities also track this level of interaction. They keep track of which sessions you attend, you know, if you have signed up for the newsletter, if you are opening the newsletter, all of these factors, you know, compose or comprise expressed interest. Universities care if you are making the effort, and they notice if you're making the effort, whether it's in person or digitally. So please make the effort. You are shopping for a home for 4 years, and you should go into every university you apply to with open eyes. Excellent, very good. Fun question here. What were your 5 words on your Stanford essay? Do you remember?
Oh, I don't remember them at all. I guess I can look for them, but yeah, I don't really remember.
Hang on, I'll find them.
It's one of the more fun Stanford questions, and I think the letter to the future roommate is also a really fun one to help with, and to really get a feel for what the applicant is like. It's amazing. Some are funny, some are serious, some are, that's my favorite Stanford supplementary essay to read always, without question. Angie, should I give you a little bit more time, or were you able to find?
I'm scrolling through the PDF now. I'm sorry, Kanak, you couldn't squirm out of this one. I've got him here somewhere.
Sure, it's brilliant. I actually had one student who, in that prompt, he just wrote one word. He just said rebellious. You know, I thought that was quite bold, you know, given that he had to describe himself in 5 words, but I think it worked for him. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. I would have said yes immediately. So we have, I'm going to mispronounce these words, Meraki, which means working creatively and soulfully together in one word, which is a wonderful word. Zealous, hautophile, and then bruderach, which is a dreamer visionary, and affable.
Mm-hmm. Very nice. I would agree.
And you got these from your friends. She surveyed her friends for these words.
Amazing, amazing. Good piece of advice for others who are applying to Stanford. Maybe ask your friends for some support and some insight. Incredible. Very good. Very interesting question. How did you decide between Princeton and your many other acceptances? How difficult was it?
I think it was a really fun experience because there wasn't really much anxiety associated with it, because it just gave me a chance to really, you know, talk to a bunch of alumni, current students, and because and that was really fun. And I think the reason I picked Princeton over some of the other universities was because it was really well reputed for engineering specifically. And unlike Cornell, it kind of had a little bit more flexibility in terms of exploring other areas of study. So that's why I really like Princeton. And aside from that, I also really like the fact that Princeton has an undergraduate focus, which means that you get to interact a lot more with some of the professors. And that was really important to me because I'd like to, you know, be part of research initiatives at the university. So I think those were the factors that were the most important to me. And that's what sort of swayed me to pick Princeton.
What were your top contenders at the end of you had gorgeous offers. I mean, I wouldn't be able to choose. I would have been like, I just sat there like, you know, what were your top contenders?
I think probably sort of Columbia, Cornell, and Georgia Tech as well, because I wasn't really sure if I wanted to go to a more tech-focused school or one that had more of a liberal arts education system. At the end of it, I ultimately decided that more of the liberal arts college was the right fit for me, because I'm not just someone who's a pure techie. I really like to branch out and try out different things. So that kind of sort of reduced the choices to just Columbia and Princeton. And ultimately, I picked Princeton because Columbia has a core curriculum, which means that every undergraduate has to take certain classes. Whereas in Princeton, you have something similar, but you have distribution requirements. So you still have to sort of take classes in philosophy, ethics, psychology, all that kind of thing, but you have more flexibility in terms of the specific courses that you choose. So, you wouldn't be forced to study something that you're not interested in. So that's why I preferred Princeton.
Very good. I think we just have time for a couple more questions, so I apologize, we will not get to all of them. Another fun question, what is the Rubik's Cube Club? What do you guys do over there?
So we just use Rubik's Cubes to create portraits. So we just kind of draw out a portrait and then sketch out which colors are needed in which place, and then we just create different patterns with the Rubik's Cube in order to create art.
What's harder, to solve the Rubik's Cube or to create a portrait using Rubik's Cubes?
The creating the portrait part is actually not that hard, because there's websites that can do it for you. So you can just input the picture and then they'll sort of create a template of what you need to do. So doing the actual Rubik's Cube is much more challenging.
Interesting. Yeah, could never solve one myself. I've given up.
When I was little, I just removed the stickers and put the sticker.
Very innovative way to solve the problem. And it reaches you to that same destination. Amazing, wonderful. And then one more fun question to finish off for today. What was the MIT food plating essay?
Okay, so I essentially really enjoy plating food. So I can't cook to save my life, but I like plating food and experimenting with different styles of plating, from minimalism to sort of more Fauvism inspired dishes that feature more bold colors. So essentially I talked about my interest for plating and how I use plating as a study guide. So I specifically talked about a dish that I created, which had like an integral shaped mound of rice. And then I used like some sauce to write dx, and that was sort of to help me remember that I need to write dx when I'm solving integrals, because I would always forget that and lose marks. So, and then after creating that dish, I've just never forgotten it, because it's just a great way to reinforce that concept and reinforce that idea. So I essentially talked about that in one of my MIT essays, which I think was about, something to do with how you express your creativity.
Amazing. Angie, was that one of your favorites, or did you have some others?
Oh, that was a game-changing essay. That was a game-changing essay, because I did not know this about Ms. Kanak, right? Because at that time, MIT we did right after early decision, right?
Yeah.
Because we really focused on the pen essays, which are very traditional, why pen, academically, kind of like why this area of study and community essays, very, very traditional kinds of essays. And MIT was the first application supplement set where it started drawing out more of Kanak's personality. And when I read this opening line, I've got it here because it's one of my favorite essays. Precisely yet with ferocity, I scribed DX onto the plate using the dull-filled piping bag.
Wow.
Right? And I'm like, what is happening here? And what Kanak just described, 100 words. She was able to fill this into 100 words. But that opening line, I'm like, oh my gosh, these other schools with many essays, we're going to have so much fun.
Incredible. Wow.
Right. Yeah, we're going to have so much fun. And yeah, this is one of my favorites. And how she expanded the concept for the roommate, write a letter to your roommate at Stanford, was also really masterfully done. It was a lot of fun, a lot of fun.
Kanak makes the Hall of Fame for sure, for writing it for many other reasons. We are all very privileged to have you here, Kanak. Thank you so much for sharing your insight with all of us, attendees and panelists alike. Unbelievable. We want to wish you the best of luck at Princeton. You're destined for great things. It's clear you've already achieved quite a few. Thank you for sharing. Angie, thank you so much for your insight, as always. It's a pleasure, always when you host your students. It's always engaging and fun at the same time. So thank you both.
Thank you, and thank you, Kanak. It's really great to see you, and thank you, Peter, and thank you to those who joined us, because you now have your journeys, right? Each student has their own individual path, and that is both the exciting and scary thing about this. And so be bold, right? Take intellectual risks, and if you need help, let us know.
And continue to Zoom in every Wednesday, same time, same place. We'll be here, and very happy to continue to answer questions then. Thank you, everybody. Have a great evening.
Okay.
Good evening, Angie.
Bye-bye. Bye, Kanak. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.